Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Place Scrutiny today, the 22nd of May. My name's Robert McGowan. I'm a Policy and Scrutiny Officer, and I'll open the meeting. And to start with the first order of business, which is the election of the chair. Do I have a proposer and a seconder?
I'd like to propose Jane Lucas.
And a seconder?
Yes, second.
Okay. Any other nominations? I need to ask. No? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Lucas is hereby chair. So over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So today, being the 22nd of May, our meeting this afternoon for Place Scrutiny. So I'd like to open up item 2, which is appointment of a vice chair. Any nominations?
Can I nominate Lisa, please?
Okay, I'll second Lisa Dimmock. Any other nominations? No. In which case, Lisa is now vice chair. Thank you very much. Okay, right, moving on. Item 3, apologies for absence.
Yeah, we have Councillor Dimmock, who is substituted today by Councillor Phil Murphy, and Councillor Tudor Thomas, substituted today by Councillor Eason.
Thank you. Okay. Declarations of interest. Anybody? No. Okay. All right. Item 5. Place Scrutiny Committee Work Forward Plan and Action List. Anybody got any thoughts, please?
Am I supposed to put my hand up in? So can I just ask the chair on the action list? There were some outstanding questions for NRW, both from people in the chamber, but I'm also going to flag up the letter that I received from a resident. And can I ask that that be forwarded to NRW for a response to him personally, please? Is that possible?
Yeah, if you'd like to send that to me, Councillor Strong. And in terms of the...
I think I gave it to you after the meeting.
Oh, that one? Yeah. Oh, okay, fair enough, yep. And the other questions, I have been assured we're going to get a reply in the next couple of weeks, as of this week.
Sorry, just to keep on that. So I assume that we're referring to the questions that Councillor Dimmock asked about the Nedden. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Bryn.
Hi, I was just going to ask, in full council last week, there was a question about the car parking review, and the answers implied that that parking review was now pretty much complete. Does that mean we've got a date now for us to scrutinise the car parking review?
Not that I've been made aware of, but I can chase that up then, because...
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that one. Anybody else got anything else? Oh, Councillor Brown, sorry.
Just under the forward work programme, I think under the terms of reference of the committee, I think it's under 8.2.2 of the Constitution of Place. It includes the following: to ensure that policy and services are responsive to the needs of businesses and visitors and promote economic activity. Please can we have regular reports on the scrutiny of assets declared surplus and an opportunity to scrutinise prior to this being decided by Cabinet?
Okay, so going from that, are you asking for regular reports as a general, but in specific, would you like items to come to us, any particular items?
I think it would be useful if we have a general reports. Discussion on it. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Anybody else for any forward work plans? Okay. Right, so are we happy with that? Yeah, great. Okay, Council and Cabinet Work Planner, that sort of touches on the same thing, really, doesn't it?
It just references
Yeah, so has anybody got any questions from any of that? But I think we've sort of covered it, but I'll just check. Okay, thank you. Okay, item 7, to confirm minutes of the previous meeting. Are we all happy with them? I've read them. Are you? Is everybody okay? So I'll propose to accept them. Councillor Bryn to second. All in favour? Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, moving swiftly on to item 8. I would open to the public forum, and I'd like to warmly welcome Felicity, who's come from, I believe, Abergavenny, to come and talk to us. And I, as you well know, I really enjoy hearing, and I hope you all do too, from our residents. So as I say every time, please, if you've got residents that wish to come and talk to us about anything, get them here, please, or get them online. We'd love to hear from them. They put us in this position of power, so it's good to hear from them. So without further ado, Felicity, would you like to talk to us, please?
Yeah, I believe I've been invited to talk to you about disabled access. I am a wheelchair and a mobility scooter user, but we have a group in Abergavenny that also involves people with visual disabilities, and there are a number of things that we need to point out about the access around the town. I hope you can all understand me, because I do lose my voice at times. There are a number of things that we've put down here from people who use first of all, disabled people. A lot of us are using mobility scooters, wheelchairs, rollators, and the blind have got dogs, or some of them are just using the white sticks. And these are the difficulties that we encounter. Sometimes it's difficult to get along the narrow pavement, and then the problem of drop curbs, which are sometimes not in the right places, or not where we want them to be. And the other problem we have when going on when out and about is cars parked on the pavements. I know that some areas around us, in particular, because we've got the A40, that the police are involved in it, but we can often not get the police to come and do anything. And then we have the council, ringing the council, and again, we quite often find the wardens are not doing anything either. The other problem we have is these large bins quite often on the pavements, especially on bin days. It's a problem for the visual impaired, particularly. And the other one is overgrown hedges quite often, that we have problems with everybody, because if you're on a scooter or wheelchair, but you cannot get past them, and quite often with cars and things we have to end up in the road. And the other one is dog muck, which I know is a great one, because this comes up a lot with people, because there's dog muck and we're trying to get past it on a narrow pavement. It's not very easy, and when you've got people who can't walk very well, and trying to get past it is difficult. Chairs and tables are another problem that in our area, particularly in Abergavenny, because we have a lot of cafes and restaurants and things, and they are all putting chairs and tables outside. And we've got one in particular in Abergavenny that, in fact, you have to go through with chairs and tables to actually get to a drop curb. And that causes particular problems, particularly for the blind, because there's obviously they're having to go past people who are sitting at the tables. Now, we would suggest as well that as a suggestion from all of us here, that it would be a good idea if somebody could come round, councillors could come round with us and actually see these problems. They can take scooters from Shop Mobility. Shop Mobility are very interested in doing this, and they can actually see the problems from our point of view. The other one was, yeah. Yeah, sometimes with drop curbs, you can get on the pavement, and then you go along the pavement, and then you find there's not a drop curb at the other end of the pavement. So then you have to go reverse all the way back to the other drop curb and get back in or on again and go on the road, which isn't very, very inconvenient for us. And also there's a few places around us that there's tactile paving. Tactile paving is very good usually, but there are some tactile paving around, but they have not got a drop curb on the other side of it, on the other side of the road, which means that you use one and then you get to the other side of the road and there isn't. Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, Felicity, would it be... You're speaking to the right committee today, because we're very lucky to have some officers here and the cabinet member here who would be very interested in what you've just said. I know Paul in front of us will be. I've just made a list. I'm sure he has too, knowing Paul. So would it be useful if we arranged out of this session now, but somewhere after this, to come and visit you and perhaps to go round, and or perhaps you make a dedicated list of these issues, and we could then arrange to go and visit with you at these places with the right officers and try and...
I think that'd be a jolly good idea, yes.
Yeah, because I know you're not alone. It happens in Monmouth an awful lot. I can name quite a few locations in my ward alone, and immediately in town where we have very similar issues. So it's quite interesting how you mentioned the bins on bin days, because it's the sort of thing we all take for granted without much thought. So perhaps that's something we really do need to consider, and perhaps ask the people who are putting the bins out to be aware of it, because I've got to be honest, that was a new one on me. I hadn't given that one any thought. So thank you very much, Felicity. Is there anybody else who'd like to ask a question, please? Jackie.
Thank you very much, Felicity, for coming and talking to our committee. I have been sort of nominated as the older person's champion as part of the sort of council group in Monmouthshire, and I would be really, really sort of up for coming to meet you and your group with the officers, because it's not just Abergavenny, it's all over the county, and if we are going to make progress to become an age-friendly county and communities, then this is like the bread and butter for people getting about safely from A to B, and also to socialise and to go to places where they want to be. So thank you so much for coming this afternoon, and I'll leave it with the chair and the officers and the cabinet member here to arrange a meeting, but thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody else got any questions for Felicity? No? Okay. So again, thank you very much for coming, Felicity, and I look forward to hopefully joining Jackie to come and meet you and to go through some of these issues for you. And I know that Paul, the officer in front of us, is very keen to help in these situations. So with any luck, we'll have a little progress, even if it's about hopefully combine education to those just simple things to make life easier for you. So thank you very much again. Oh yes, and by the way, you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting if you wish. Please do, but don't feel you have to. All right? Okay, thank you. Okay. No one else in public forum, is there? No? Okay. Right, so the main meat of the agenda. Okay, item 9, active travel to scrutinise various aspects. Oh, that's me. Has someone got the speaker on? Yeah, various aspects of active travel. So, without further ado, can I please introduce you to our main officer for this wonderful task of Paul Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Members, Felicity, my name is Paul Sullivan, Head of customer communication engagement, so active travel is contained within that remit. So before I get into the presentation, can I just take the opportunity to thank Felicity for your time this afternoon. I think it's quite emotional listening to that and hearing kind of a real lived experience, but also I know from messages I've already just seen from officers who are listening this afternoon, kind of adds fuel to the fire of why we do what we do to try and make the environments better for individuals like yourself and wider. Hopefully the presentation that I'll share will give some reassurance to some of the work that we're trying to achieve for individuals like yourself and wider, but also some of the work that's currently going on and some of the work planned in the future. So I know from speaking to colleagues in placemaking, in regeneration with regards to placemaking plans that have recently taken place, the Pro Mobility group done a walk around with the steering group in Abergavenny, which I know you were part of, Felicity, and accessibility has shone through in that placemaking plan. So just reassurance from this afternoon and a message passed on from colleagues that the accessibility audit has been landed, has been fed back through that consultation process and is a project they're looking to take forward. And I know that would be much beneficial right across the county, not just in Abergavenny. So I think the experiences you just shared just echo the need for that. So once again, my thanks for that. I'm just going to share screen on a presentation that I'd like to take you through this afternoon. Okay, I'm going to start today's presentation just with a short video, just explaining what myself, the team, what we've done with active travel, tried to capture and encapsulate what we're trying to achieve, and I think it plays well into the points that we've just heard from Felicity as well.
What will you discover when you leave your car behind? More time to breathe and take in the view. More time for adventure and a chance to explore. More time to catch up and connect with friends, old and new. Time for well-being and more time for you. So whether you walk or wheel, why not rethink your commute and get more from your journey when you choose active travel?
Okay, so that was a short video that we pulled together around about 18 months ago now. I think when you hear the term active travel, regeneration, placemaking, it's very easy to get caught up in kind of corporate terms. Ultimately, active travel and all those wider terms I've just referenced is about people. We heard the experience from Felicity there at the start, and we've heard it wider throughout the development and work we've done. Active travel, the premise of it is looking at walking or wheeling, and I emphasise the wheeling part. It's not just cycling, it's accessibility from mobility scooter users, it's mums and dads using pushchairs and being able to cross safely with their families. To replace purposeful journeys to key destinations and replace those short car journeys. So why active travel? It's a statutory duty as placed on us under the 2013 legislation, the Active Travel Wales Act. It helps reduce carbon footprint and our collective response to climate emergency, has physical and mental health benefits, has financial benefits, and sustainable alternative to motor vehicle transport. And one thing I'd like to just emphasise this afternoon to members is not leisure focused, it's focused on those purposeful journeys. So when we look at purposeful journeys, within Monmouthshire we've set a strategic focus up to focus on routes up to 3 miles, where key destinations focus on travel to school, town centres, key employment sites, bus and rail stations. When we look at how these are developed, it's through a number of processes. So first of all, with the well tag process, the image across the bottom of the screen. Stage 1 is understanding the issue that we're trying to solve. Stage 2 is the long list of options to try and achieve that solution. Stage 3 is the detailed design. Stage 4 is the interventions and the construction. Stage 5 being the evaluation.
Excuse me, Paul, is there any way of making the stages bigger? Because I can see that Felicity is struggling to see the stages. We might know them, but we might not.
Just bear with me 2 seconds.
Sorry.
That's okay. Is that
better, Felicity?
That's better.
Is that okay? Happy to email out a copy of the presentations, and also I know it's on the agenda pack, but Felicity, happy to email these out direct to you following today's session as well.
Perfect.
So as we move through each of those stages, public consultation takes place to capture and understand the local community feeling and input into that design, with that design stage being amended throughout that period. Just share screen again. So back in 2020, a collective decision was made to reposition active travel away from highways and placed in Customer and Cultural Wellbeing Directorate, also known as MonLife. So it's developed a more holistic approach to active travel, integration of cross-policy working with national recognition received, and active travel is much more prominent now in cross-directorate working. I think it's important to note that across the rest of Wales, it is still very much held within the highways function. What we've tried to do over the last 5 years that I've had responsibility for active travel is that much wider look. So I don't look at these projects from an engineering perspective, I look at them from a people perspective. And I think that's really important for families, for grandparents, for all of our generations to have schemes that are accessible, schemes that are going to encourage and make that meaningful choice to move away from those car journeys. Within Monmouthshire, we have 7 settlements as identified within the Active Travel Wales Act, that being Abergavenny, Caldicot, Chepstow, Gilwan, Meigr and Undy combined, Monmouth and Usk. In terms of funding, so the way active travel funding works is it's an annual fund through a bid submission process, a split of core funding and strategic funding. So on the graph at the bottom of the screen, the blue funding is the core funding that is allocated to from Welsh Government to local authorities to enact the Act and develop schemes to support wider network development. The green bars are what we are bidding for on a national level, effectively competing against the other 21 local authorities. I think you can see from the diagram shown, and prior to that point, we've seen a significant increase in funding over the last 5 years. For the last 3 financial years, Monmouthshire has actually received the most amount of funding across Wales through that competitive bidding process. Something I'm very proud of, and I know collectively as officers we're very proud of through the work that's been developed, because I think members will all be aware that it's not very often Monmouthshire is at the top of the funding pot when we're seeing national funding. So I think it goes as testament to the collective work that's been done in this space over the last 5 years. So if I just take a little look back to last financial year before we look ahead to this upcoming one. So the Active Travel scheme funding last year was looking at the Abergavenny Active Travel Bridge and associated links in Castle Meadows and Llynfoest, focused on the development of the bridge, the design for the links, and looking at the procurement for the bridge contractor. The Sevenside Spinal Route, the construction of Woodstock Way, scheme development of Caldecott Castle multi-user route, the Education and Leisure Links Phase 2 scheme development and 7 tunnel junction links, the Monmouth Y Bridge and associated links, and the Monmouth Kingswood Gate construction ready design. So looking at the final section of the Meadows, getting that to a tender ready design. The core funding, I think one thing I want to highlight through the core funding, and in particular based on the feedback that we heard from Felicity at the start of today's session, we've implemented a quick wins programme through the core funding. So where we deem quick wins, that could be putting in a drop curb, it could be removing a barrier, it could be cutting vegetation back. Some of these smaller interventions, I don't think it can get lost how much those small interventions can mean to people. And I think hearing Felicity's experience and just re-emphasise that to myself even more so this afternoon. So there's a number of different schemes right across the county that we've delivered, as well as some of the route monitoring and auditing, which we'll come on to more details shortly. The support of cross-department collaboration, and I don't make any apologies for kind of re-emphasising the point. Active travel has to be a whole authority approach if it's going to be successful. It has to have every department having the input and seeing what part they've got to play in creating these improved networks for our residents. So planning, public transport, highways development, road safety, countryside access and green infrastructure, just a few in which have had a significant part to play in this progress. So when we look at examples of some of that progress, on the left-hand side at the top of the screen is an example of a barrier that was in existence in Monmouth. That barrier has since been removed on that shared space, again emphasising the importance of pedestrian and wheeled access through there, and we've received very positive feedback on it. On the right-hand side, we've got a number of different data sources which go into tracking movement of vehicles, tracking movement of pedestrians, looking at traffic speeds, pedestrian counts, which all inform the design process that we work through in the well-tag process, and there's a couple of screenshots as examples. An example of infrastructure that was delivered in Monmouth, again starting at the top left-hand side, mini roundabout, which traffic speeds were significant, has been turned into a T-junction, prioritising more space either side for pedestrian and wheeled access and connecting into wider schemes that have already been implemented. And then on the right-hand side, a previous uncontrolled crossing point, which is now turned into a controlled crossing point to provide safety for individuals and more vulnerable users choosing active travel modes of transport. Again, in the quick wins theme, a previous desire line that was used by individuals but significant accessibility restrictions has been turned into a more formalised desire line. And some of our larger strategic schemes where we've seen the active travel path on disused railway with Caldecott and Portskewitt turned into an active travel compliant route, and work continues to provide connections to communities and connections into the existing localities in this space. In terms of active travel design development, As per the Act, we have a process in which active travel network maps are updated on a regular basis. Used to be 3 years, that's now moved to a 5-year programme, and next year we'll be going through that consultation process again. That starts by looking at the whole area, so Monmouthshire as a whole, and as I referenced earlier, the 7 locations that we've got within for active travel purposes. It then looks at the network within one of those 7 areas and is split into what is deemed a compliant route, which would be existing, or a route which we'd like to develop more in the future, which is deemed a future route. They are then split into a prioritisation process in terms of primary and secondary routes to understand if we are to implement a scheme in a section, what is going to have the most positive impact in terms of connecting to some of those key locations, such as schools, such as bus, rail, intersections, education sites, as per our strategic focus. That prioritisation is then split into those projects, which then ultimately goes on to input into that overall design that we work through the WildTag process. Another project that I'd like to highlight this afternoon was eMove Behavioural Change Initiative. It was delivered in Abergavenny as part of the wider scheme that we're looking to deliver there. So this was more of a promotional piece to residents, understanding the opportunity around e-cycles and the possibility of hiring them for a short period of time with a view to then going on and making more sustainable choices in terms of their travel behaviours. So the scheme objectives, it was to promote and gather evidence on e-cycle usage, enable access to e-cycles, improve accessibility and transport options. In total, 78 individuals loaned them, mainly for around about a month period, although longer loans to organisations did take place as well. There was a total of 584 trips recorded, and the average trip distance, 5.1 kilometres. So again, going back to that strategic focus of journeys up to 3 miles, very much focused on that specific target that we wanted. So not just leisure focused in this space, very much the feedback we captured was based around those locations, those key locations, and changing that behaviour around short car journeys. Immediate outcomes, increased active travel usage, reduced car usage, new journeys recorded, improved mobility, and then some of the medium to long term outcomes set there around promotion, health and well-being, community and independence. Excuse me. So one scheme that I want to highlight as well this afternoon is the Williamsfield Lane scheme in Monmouth. So on the map on the left-hand side, you can see the Kingswood Gate development site there, and then the rest of the what was mapped previously and is now mapped as well as a whole, the active travel network map connecting into some of the key amenities within Monmouth Town Centre. This development site, built back in 2018, very disconnected for active travel purposes, and something that I know the residents have quite rightly challenged since, and are keen for us to finalise the last section of this route to be able to provide those connections into Monmouth. A number of phases have been delivered throughout. Images across the bottom have shown that in different sections of this scheme, we've also taken the opportunity to provide additions to just the active travel route. So a new play area at Kingsfee has been provided. That has been provided as part of the Active Travel Fund, and the Active Travel Path actually runs through the middle of that play area with the design associated around that. That scheme has been just highlighted recently as best practice across Wales in a new funding pot that's been made available for Welsh Government for play areas. And some of the feedback that we've heard from that section is children asking to leave earlier in the morning, leave the car at home so they can play in the park before they actually go into school. some of the data that we're capturing through counters, and again, counters can be seen on the bottom right-hand picture. Data showing significant peaks of usage between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock in the morning and 3 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, which is aligned to the feedback that we're receiving from Overmonnow Primary School, and again connecting into the wider network for young people walking to Monmouth Comprehensive School. Final section of this scheme, phase 3, as I referenced in the last year's funding, took this design up to a tender-ready process. I'm pleased to confirm that the tender is now out for this scheme, with tender returns expected back in the middle of June. If those tenders are successful, then we're hoping this final section will be constructed before October. The final section of this scheme connecting into the wider network that's already been developed and providing those residents with the connectivity that they deserve. And I think just one point that I'd want to emphasise with this scheme as well in particular, I touched on planning colleagues earlier. I think the importance of when any new development, and we've had significant input into the RLDP, when any development is being considered, active travel needs to be considered at the front end. So we're not retrofitting schemes for residents who are in that area. They are thought of right from the off. So not just how are we going to get cars in and out of that site, but how are residents going to be able to access the local amenities as per the transport hierarchy structure. So in terms of a look ahead to this current financial year, we saw a change in the criteria that we were able to bid for. So last year we were able to bid for 4 strategic schemes. This year only 1 has been available. Again, a competitive process against other local authorities across Wales. And with our core funding, it must be a split of 60% based on construction and 40% on scheme development. It's been administered by TFW for the last year before moving to CJCs and delivery through regional development plans, which consultation has recently just closed. Must include construction in the financial year, and all risks such as land ownership, planning permission, etc. must be mitigated before that bid. So this year we've been successful in securing a £6 million award for Abergavenny. Due to the change in the funding criteria, as referenced, there was a collective officer and cabinet decision with a view to progressing the Abergavenny scheme based on the current stage that project is at. So work allocated this year is looking at fabrication of the bridge deck, the Lamfoyce links element, mobilisation for river working in 26, and the Castle Meadows. With regards to core funding, 210,000 contribution towards construction of the multi-user route in Caldicot, £140,000 with regards to scheme development for the Monmouth Y active travel crossing, and 150,000 county-wide quick wins programme and promotional activities and training. So again, coming back to some of those smaller interventions that we touched on earlier. In terms of active travel, that's the kind of end in terms of my section for the presentation. However, I'm going to continue with some road safety elements. So officers have joined us on the call this afternoon and have had input into the presentation. So within our road safety team, there's a number of other interventions that are providing support for our schools to provide that kind of environment from that younger age for our future generations to make those choices and hopefully influence their parents in terms of that behavioural change as well. So I'm just going to take you through a few of those points, and I'm sure officers on the call will be happy to take any questions in this section as we move forward. So in terms of road safety revenue, it's a £58,500 award, and that's split across a number of provisions. So curb crafts, child pedestrian training, active travel workshops for under 7s, national standard cycle training, road safety school transition intervention, and mature drivers intervention. In terms of child pedestrian training, formerly known as Curbcraft, it's a programme that is offered to all primary schools and delivered over a 5 to 6 week programme. It's delivered from a volunteer and officer basis where we're providing those children with the skills to identify safe crossing points, understand any issues that might be within that vicinity, and learning how to keep safe when crossing those roads. So a really important programme focused on children aged 5 to 7, typically in years 1 and 2 within our primary schools. Active Travel Under 7s workshops, again available to all primary schools in Monmouthshire, delivered by a mix of grant-funded staff and volunteers. 3 engaging workshops throughout the academic year designed to encourage safe and active travel to schools. The workshop themes: be bright, be seen, so promoting visibility for children when they're out and about. Scoot to school, so scooter training, and again filtering back into the walking or wheeling element. Scooters are really popular for children, and sometimes from a practicality perspective for our parents are sometimes more manageable than cycling if they're going to make that choice in the mornings. So the infrastructure at the school is really key, I think, to make sure families can do that. So we've installed a number of cycling and scooter storage at our primary school locations to enable that behaviour change. And the Cool Kids Wear Lids programme, so promotion of helmet safety for our children. National standard cycle training. So again, when we're focusing on the cycling element, confidence is a really important part, both for parents to be able to feel confident enough to let their children, but for children to feel confident enough to make those journeys as well. So it's split into 2 aspects. The level 1 is based on the schoolyard, and the level 2 is out on the road. And when we say out on the road, a much smaller group with 2 instructors and talking through positioning the bike where they should in the carriageway, accessing some of the shared use paths, the understanding behind the term shared use and being courteous for other people, and how to travel from A to B, and highlighting some of those key points. Road safety school transition. So again, I think the transition from year 6 to year 7 is very daunting at times for some of our young people, and they may be making those sustainable transport choices within their primary school setting. However, when they move up to their secondary school, that may well be an additional challenge built into that transition. So the year 6 transition programme is aimed at focusing on where the children live and their best route to continue that sustainable transport to the school, whether that be walking or cycling. And the final section that we want to focus on is the safe routes to schools. So under you'll be aware that during the last year, distances for provision of school transport have recently changed. This resulted in 250 individual assessments that needed to be carried out. So that change has brought Monmouthshire in line with the national standards and is focused on how our young people travel to schools. Within that school travel planning, schools are encouraged to complete active travel school plans, and 21 out of the 34 schools currently have existing plans in place, with a number of others still currently working through them. So aligned with curriculum reform and the health and wellbeing agenda, I think active travel's got a really key part to play in this, and how our schools evidence the support that they're providing against that health and wellbeing agenda. So a school commitment to show that an active travel school plan is in place, and that encouragement for children and families to make that start to the day and that transition home, I think is a good way to begin the day to support the learning for those students. And supported by that is School Streets. So School Streets is a project that focuses on reducing car journeys directly outside of these school gates. So trying to cleanse that area, providing a safer environment outside of the school gates for families who arrive in or families who are leaving at the end of the day. It's currently being trialled across 3 schools. We've seen really positive engagement with the schools involved, and promotion via the School Streets principals through promotional videos, poster competitions, and other forms of engagement with families and the community. terms of challenges, without physical enforcement, compliance depends heavily on voluntary behaviour change. The messaging reach and clarity depends on school engagement and also parent participation. But I think when we start to look at some of the data that we're seeing through these pilots, it's quite encouraging. So Undy, Gilwyn and Castle Park Primary have all been involved in the School Streets pilot, and in terms of the data that is available, you can see the reduction that we're seeing across those schools. So in Undy, a 70.6 reduction in vehicles compared to the pre-intervention in the morning, and a 51.3 in the afternoon. Gilwyn, a 56.5% reduction in the morning, 68.8 in the afternoon, and Castle Park, a 40.9% reduction and a 19% reduction in the afternoon. I think it's important to emphasise as well, we're just about to launch through our Let's Talk Monmouthshire platform a detailed consultation with these 3 schools and the parents and children who attend them to try and understand some of this data even more so, and understand kind of their experiences of what we've seen through School Streets before any wider interventions are rolled out. So in terms of the next steps, continue community engagement, monitor and evaluate the impact, as I've just referenced, in terms of some of that data capture, and improve communication and visibility across these programmes to ensure compliance is maintained. Thank you for your time this afternoon. Myself and officers would be more than happy to take questions outside of today's session through our active travel inbox, and likewise colleagues in road safety. So thank you very much. Happy to take any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Very in-depth. I've written a few questions down. I'm sure others have too. So before I go to me, anybody who'd like to ask some questions? Oh, right. Oh, sorry. Do you hands up? Okay, Councillor Murphy.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the presentation, Paul. It was better the second time of listening, because you pick up on different things. You had one slide that started off with the Abergavenny Bridge and Castle Meadows, and there was a few other things on there, why Bridge and various other things. Given that we've gone down from 4 schemes to 1, how difficult is it going to be to get the funding for that, and over what time scale do you think these schemes can be delivered?
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. So if I'm being honest, the change in criteria is challenging for us, and it's challenging for us because of the way in which we've tried to grow the network over the last 5 years. So right from the off, I've been of the mindset that if we focused on a single project and the time it takes to move through the WildTag process and into implementation, the speed of that network development is going to be far behind some of the aspirations we've got in terms of on a local and national level to make a meaningful change for active travel. So the whole focus that we've done for the last 5 years has been on package schemes and individual schemes that connect to each other to form that overall network. So at point of that funding changing, within those 4 package schemes, there was approximately 14 individual component parts to those overall 4 strategic schemes. So by that being stripped back, it has had a significant impact, but I think coming back to the kind of collaborative approach that we're looking to do, we've been able to secure funding outside of active travel through the Safe Routes and Community funding to sustain the project in Monmouth. We've been able to look at Burns funding and wider initiatives along the Sevenside area with the focus on the regional transport plan and the connections there. So that collective approach across officers, I think, is really key to securing the best success for Monmouthshire as a whole, and we'll continue to tap into through our regular monthly meetings with Transport for Wales. If there's any opportunities for any underspend on a national level, then we'll be putting our projects right to the front to turn some of those back on.
Yeah, thanks for that.
If I can chip in there, I think it's important to notice in terms of the regional transport plan that we have our strategic schemes are in that draft that has gone out for consultation at the moment. The intention is from Welsh Government is that in future funding will come through
those regional partnerships, the CJCs. So, and that will determine how we're able to take things forward.
Do you anticipate that we'll get a better deal out of CJCs than we got before? I would rather hope we would, but doubt that we will.
It's hard to know. I think the big step change that was identified by Audit Wales, which is what we've all been looking for, is multi-year funding, so that we can go, hand in hand with communities and say, this is the plan over the next 5 years, rather than that sort of a somewhat, what can sometimes seem to communities like a bit of a stop-go approach, that we've consulted on a scheme and it may be several years before we're actually able to deliver that, and that I know causes frustration at times.
Thank you, Chair. And just one point to add, just as a last point on that, I think the priority for myself and us collectively as officers is to get schemes to a tender-ready stage. I think that's the priority. The sooner we can get those schemes to the tender-ready stage, the more we can present those for funding opportunities. I think the continued growth that we want to achieve to get them to that point, there's a number of then funding opportunities we can put those schemes in front of, but that's the most important point to me, is kind of have shovel ready, for the want of a better term, schemes that we can then present to those funding bodies.
Okay. All right. Councillor Crook, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask a question about the school, really, and the time that the information that we've got of 70.6, is that June 2024, or is that a more recent figure?
Chair, we're joined by Geraint Roberts online, who I'm sure will be happy to take our questions. Officer who's responsible. Thank you.
Hi, Councillor Cook. Hi, everybody. The data that we took, we had the census put in for June 2024 pre-signage, so that was to count the data before we actually started the school streets, and then we took a week in May. We've taken a few weeks along the way, but the most recent one is a week in May, where we've compared that data, so pre-signage, pre-school streets, and then the most recent data is the one where we've been, but where we've had the school streets put in. So it's just comparing 2 different weeks, one before, one during.
I just wonder, I mean, obviously I'm a governor at that school, and I'm a little bit concerned about the abuse of traffic being overrun by the temporary closures, even by the parents. And how do we actually police this? Is this a police matter, or how do we do it as far as Monmouth County Council is concerned?
So we send our civil enforcement officers to site as much as possible. We are aware of the other sites they need to pick up in their other working patterns. We do try and send them to speak to parents about problem parking and try to encourage park and stride. So information has gone out via the school to try and use Mega and Undy Hub, or a park further away and try and park and stride in, and to try and alleviate any parking out in and around the area. As Paul alluded to, we are putting out some surveys to local residents, to the school for parents to fill in, just so we can look at that feedback and look at some next steps going forward and what we can do to try and increase the traffic in and around the area.
I know certainly the schools are making every effort to police it, but it's not up to the teachers, really, is it, or even the headmistress to police it. But we really need, I think, to start looking at how we're going to police it, because it's increasingly being abused at this moment in time.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook, and now Councillor Bryn, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation today. It's very interesting, and yeah, we're all really grateful for the work that the Active Travel team are doing, and excited by some of the bigger projects. But I know a number of councillors voiced their frustrations with you during our last meeting, and Ms. Brannigan has touched upon it today, in that a number of us put in requests requests after walking our wards about smaller interventions that we think that would really make a huge difference to increasing the mobility of our residents. And I'm talking about installation of drop curbs, removal of soil from pavements, smoothing pavements. And a lot of these things make a huge difference to our residents, but it's very difficult to get anything done. I personally, apart from the installation of one bench, have failed to get any interventions put into place in my ward as yet. So I think we really welcome a system of reporting poor pavements and other interventions that would improve the mobility of our residents. And if we could put something in place that we know if these interventions will ever take place, and if they are, where they are in a list of priorities, because at the moment we're just kind of shouting in the wind. So if you could put that into place, I think that would really help both us, as when our residents approach us and say, we asked for drop curbs 3 years ago. I've got a bus stop, a raised bus stop so people get on a bus, but there's no drop curb to it. How difficult can this be? And we go, I've asked. It is very frustrating on that front. Apart from that, I've got a few other questions, if that's okay. So you say 21 of our 34 schools have active travel plans. Could you tell us how many of the remaining schools are working towards writing one, and how effective the writing of these plans have been? Because we're all aware that, as we're discussing, school traffic is a big issue. We can all know when we're on the holidays. So we'd like to know, if we could, how these interventions are, how effective these interventions are being. Can you also tell me, please, what percentage of Monmouthshire students are involved in the road safety transition sessions? Because I found this really interesting. I wasn't aware of this, and I found it really fascinating. And what percentage of comprehensive students walk or cycle at least part of their journey actively, compared with primary school children? And I say partially because I appreciate that we live in a rural community, and so that a lot of children need to be driven from home. But with older parents, they should have the flexibility to drop their children off at the nearest safe space, so that children can walk at least part of the route and they're not doing a door-to-door, and that will then release some of the pressure on actual immediate school areas. Do we have numbers for students that are doing this, and is this encouraged? Is a partial lift system encouraged? And could you tell me what percentage of children receive cycle training up to stage 2 in Monmouthshire? Diolch yn fawr.
Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I'll take some points and then I'll defer to Geraint for some others because of the split responsibility there. So I think, first of all, the member seminar that we held on Monday, the point around the quick wins prioritisation was not lost on me, and that's certainly been taken away as an action. I think both from a point of reporting and some of the suggestions around the My Monmouthshire interface, such as pothole reporting and some of the quick wins interventions. I think some of the functionality that we've got within Let's Talk Monmouthshire as well, and the ability to drop pins and comments on locations, needs to be explored, and that's been taken away as an action on Monday. The process of sometimes, and I know I explained again in the session on Monday, sometimes what seems so straightforward sometimes is very frustratingly difficult, and I find that as an officer as well. So I think there's a combination of understanding the list that we've got, understanding the prioritisation linked to some of the data that we've got, but then also the resource to implement. So from a design perspective within our internal design team, because any changes to the highways network, even if it's a drop curb, needs to have that design element built in to make sure that we're meeting standards, and then also the implementation through internal teams such as our grounds team, who've got responsibility for much wider maintenance within our neighbourhood services. So I think, just for confirmation, that the prioritisation, I think, is really important to myself, and I know it is to you and wider members. So a piece of work will be looking to take place on that following Monday session and today's. A little bit on data. So back in 2021, when our last Active Travel Network Map consultation took place, 100% of schools across Monmouthshire, primary and secondary, took part in the designated surveys for children and young people. The data that gave us was really rich in terms of the children's opinions. 63% of secondary school pupils wanted to actively travel more, as per the survey they completed, and 73% of primary school age pupils wanted to actively travel more. When we particularly focus on cycling, and I'll have to check the figure, but I believe it was less than 3% are currently cycling to our schools. So there's a significant disconnect between children wanting to do it, particularly on cycling, and the children who are actually doing it. When we dug down deeper through specific workshops, I think we delivered, to 8 schools spread across the 7 localities that we've got. Traffic speeds and traffic volumes were the 2 highest reasons. Obviously, since that point, back in 2021, we've seen the national rollout to 20 miles an hour. We've seen more growth in some of the network developments through some of the active travel schemes and small interventions that we've changed, and we're going back out for that consultation next year, so I think it'd be interesting to compare that. Colleagues in education deliver a Healthy Schools survey through the School Enrichment Programme every year, and there's data from a secondary school perspective that is sat within there. We're kind of constantly analysing how young people are travelling, and perhaps follow up on that point specifically to see where that latest position is. Geraint, from your perspective, can I pass over for the school travel planning point and the wider point around data that Councillor Bryn referenced?
Not a problem. I did try and scribble down quickly what the question is, but if I've missed anything, please let me know. In terms of the school travel plans, I haven't got the data in terms of how many haven't got them at the moment, which I can get for you. But in terms of the ones that have got the documents, they are rolling documents, so it's not a case of us doing the active travel plans with the schools and then leaving them on the shelf. We do revisit them with the schools on a yearly basis, which involves updating action plans and working with the schools towards new action plans if needed. The school transition programme, so that's offered to every year 6 pupil across Monmouthshire in every school. It takes between 30 and 45 minutes depending on class participation, but it's almost a bit of a refresher with road safety. When they do curb craft or child pedestrian training, it's not a case of them walking to school in big gangs with earbuds in or whatever else they're doing by the time they get to year 6. So we talk about the new dangers that they're facing. So when they're walking across the road, are they checking the road safely, or are they walking across the road using their mobile phone? What they shouldn't be doing. And then we talk about their new journeys to their comprehensive school, whether it be in groups of young people or whether they're doing it on their own. We take maps in so they can look at new junctions that they may or may not be crossing, and about those safer routes to schools. So instead of crossing a busier road, can they find a safer place to cross on those routes, on those journeys that they're taking? The cycle training we offer, every school is offered level 1, which I go in and run. Which takes, for a class of 30, it normally takes a day, and we run that with year 5. Level 1 and 2 is delivered by an external provider that we use, and because of how tight the funding is, we only tend to offer that to 4 or 5 schools because of how much it costs for this external funded external partner to come in and deliver the training. We work with the active travel team to highlight those schools that we run it with. So, for example, this year we've been doing a lot of work with Osbaston, and they've just received their level 1 and 2 cycle training. Similarly, Undy have just are currently receiving their cycle training this week in promotion of the school street. So hopefully we see them taking those active travel journeys once they get comfortable and confident riding their bikes to and from school. We try and share it out across the local authority every year, so it's not the same schools receiving that training, but it does come down to the schools that get involved in some of the other road safety interventions that we run, and it's that buy-in from the school that we want. One other area that we do look at is those journeys to the comprehensive school. So it would be, in our opinion, we want those children to be cycling to the comprehensive school, so we try and deliver that level 1 and 2 training to primary schools that are in close proximity to the comprehensive school to try and promote that active travel. Hopefully I haven't missed anything. If I have, please let me know.
No, thanks. Good. I know there's no numbers, but it's interesting to see the nuance between the fact that you are focused on children that could then carry on to cycle to the comprehensive, and that's really good and interesting to know. Thank you very much. Can I ask one following question to Mrs. Sullivan? It was about the quick wins. Can you tell me how it is now? When I put in a request for drop curbs years ago, how long I know you explained that some of these things are not simple to undertake and that they all need design, but how long do you think is a reasonable time for this design process to take place, and then us as councillors should be told this is possible or isn't possible, or what do you think? Because currently we are just left. We can put in a request and we're told, yeah, it'll be done, maybe, and that's it. What do you think? What do you think is an action plan? What do you think is what would be your desire?
Thank you. So I think from a reasonable time perspective, I think the commitment for a reasonable time would need to take place once we understand the prioritisation work that we've got from the existing provision that is in there, and we understand kind of red, amber, green in terms of that principle. I think it's worth noting that all of this is subject to funding as well, and we've seen ups and downs in our core level funding over the last few years, as well as changes in some of the strategic schemes. So I know a number of the drop curbs that were being designed as part of the Wysham projects were linked to the wider Active Travel Crossing Links programme. So you've got that balance of strategic schemes versus core as well, which as an officer, I think on an annual basis, those funding cycles are very challenging to enact. But time frame, like I said, I think that piece of work that we committed to on Monday and again today, I think that needs to be done at pace so we can understand the current programme that we've got, and then look at a reasonable way forward in terms of if a request comes in and it is a high priority, subject to funding, realistically, how quick can we turn that round? Because, as I said, a lot is dependent on the internal capacity for design as well as not just implementation. But it's not been lost on me the need for the prioritisation work to take place.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now to Councillor Brown, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just looking at the slides, it says strategic bid Abergavenny £6 million award. Has that money already been, or is that the bid you're making, or have all these already been achieved? Because I'm not quite sure on that. And looking at this, obviously I come from the Chepstow surrounding area, and there doesn't seem to be a great deal. Obviously £6 million on Abergavenny is one area in a very large chunk, and there doesn't seem to be a great deal on Chepstow. But obviously, coming from a rural area as well, I'm concerned that active travel centres on urban areas, and it doesn't have a great deal to offer to the rural areas. And with regard to travel to school, I mean, the A48 Pulmeric would just be too dangerous to cycle on. I mean, even pedestrians, walking on a pavement near the garden centre have got hit by vehicles. So I think, obviously some routes are, particularly dangerous in any event. So I just wondered, and also how does this link into public rights of way and making current routes accessible? Because in the rural areas, quite a lot of the routes aren't being maintained properly and are difficult for people to actually access or get through. So increasing the active travel routes is all very well, but then you've got the extra revenue involved in upkeeping them as well. So there's quite a few questions there, I'm afraid, but I'm afraid I always think of quite a few things. When this seminar was done for members, just with regard to going around the schools and trying to make them safer for the school traffic, there was a question that suggested that some of this traffic was being displaced. So in other words, what was happening was that it may be a little bit better around the schools, but then it was causing problems elsewhere. And I've come across a similar sort of problem because when I was in councillor at Cheshire East, my ward covered the hospital, and what happened is we kept double yellow lines, and then the traffic was just gradually moving farther away, and the only thing that it did was actually displace the traffic as opposed to remove it. So I think that that's a particular issue as well. So I haven't clarified terribly well all the different questions, but I think one is this a bid, these awards, have you actually got the money, and what are you bidding for this year is one question. Another question is about obviously the rural issue, and also, the fairness of funding and the allocation of resources to all of our main towns, because there doesn't seem very much at all there for Chepstow. And as I think Councillor Bryn has said, even in rural villages, there are questions when you do need drop curbs and things for people, So it just seems as if just looking at this, it feels as if Chepstow and the rural areas are missing out on any of this. Thank you.
After you, Paul.
I'll start that one off, if I may, with an answer with regard to the rural element, which I agree with you is extremely important. In an ideal world, we would want everybody to be...
Sorry to interrupt, but nobody knows who you are.
Oh, sorry.
And for those that are watching, I do apologise.
Councillor Sarah Birch, Cabinet Member for Rural Affairs, Housing and Tourism, and Active Travel.
Sorry, Sarah.
So, with regard to the rural issues, I entirely agree that I think ideally we'd want everybody in any community to be able to walk or cycle to their major settlement, and of course to public transport links. The priority for funding and for action, because in terms of the value for money, the most impact for the money, and the emphasis of Welsh Government funding has been to that 3 mile strategic focus of the 7 major settlements. So in terms of getting people who live on the edge of town to the school, the hospital, the shops, and wherever else they want to go within that settlement. So that has tended to be the emphasis, but the Public Rights of Way team are also doing a great deal of work about least restrictive access on public rights of way, which again is the same thing, because a lot of our rural rights of way are where they were because they enable people to get from one part of that rural settlement to another. With regards to with Chepstow, there is funding, as you're aware, around the improvements to public transport interchange in Chepstow, and active travel improvements as part of that programme. So at the moment, Atkins Realis are running a series of meetings with... Sorry?
I thought that was... I thought I heard that Chepstow Transport Hub funding was in question, because obviously there was a change of government, and I don't know whether or not that is still in progress or not.
Yeah. Yes, that project is still in progress.
And the funding is still available, is it?
I believe so, as far as I know.
Yeah, so officers, Councillor Birch just alluded to Akins Realis, who's delivered a number of stakeholder sessions locally. I suppose two parts to it. Last year, through the core funding was allocated to Chepstow to look at the actions from an active travel perspective, from the prioritisation of routes through the Chepstow Transport Study, and some pre-work within the core funding to lead us into the Levelling Up Fund. So work continues to look at the transport hub change and the active travel project within there. There's still some scope to be done in terms of defining the funding across each of those aspects, but the funding is still very much available from a Monmouthshire perspective, as confirmed by UK government.
It's okay, because I thought, and when we had feedback on that, one of the issues that we did raise in terms of buses, I think it was something that Councillor Griffiths also raised, was the fact that we were concerned that when the link was going to go between where the bus station is and where the train station is, it was only allowed to be used for an extension of one or two bus services, as opposed to a dedicated service that went actually from the bus station to the train station, which will be applicable for all buses, regardless of route. So I think that was a particular concern, and I don't think we got any particular feedback on that. Thank you.
Want to know that one?
Yes, I think in terms of specifics on the scheme, happy to take that away as an action and get officers who are closer to that scheme to provide a written update for local members of where we are and where the next steps are. As I said, from a financial perspective, the scope is still being worked with the active travel elements, and I know that's my particular focus in terms of that project, but I think a written update on where we are with the Levelling Up Fund to share across members is probably good action to take away from today, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think perhaps something to feature there is that we are working closely with the transforming Chepstow team, that group in the with the town council and wider. Obviously, we would want to engage with a much wider group of stakeholders, but I think it is important that in all of the towns we are working with the town councils and with local people in developing our schemes, and with local members, of course.
Yeah, I think when we did have a seminar on it, it was very useful because there was a suggestion of a one-way system, which everybody in Chepstow, in terms of traffic, knew would not work at all, And, the difficulty is officers obviously cover Monmouthshire, but they don't live in an area and they don't know what the implications of what's being proposed are. Thank you.
Of course, you don't have to ask.
Thank you. Yeah, and again, I think that's a good emphasis of the WellTag process that I alluded to earlier, and the input from local members, but also I think importantly local residents to capture that local knowledge, because ultimately that local knowledge is the most important part in terms of any scheme design. If I just perhaps take some of those other questions, and if I missed any, apologies, and happy to come back to them. So in terms of the Abergavenny project, so that £6 million award has been confirmed by Transport for Wales and was confirmed as part of our media release, I believe April, that it went out as part of the wider transport funding that has been allocated. So that £6 million is going to take us forward, as identified in the project and the presentation earlier, and we hope to provide a more detailed programme of what that looks like through ongoing conversations with contractors over the next few weeks. In terms of the public rights of way, I know I referenced the Public Rights of Way team and green infrastructure in the presentation, who's been kind of integral to some of the work that we're doing. The rurality of Monmouthshire is not lost on me as an officer. I know it's not lost on the team. The Active Travel Fund, the only funding that we can apply for active travel funding is within those boundaries for those 7 locations. There's a view that more rural connections could possibly be provided. However, we've got, from our last active active travel network map back in 2001. We had 101 compliant routes and just shy of 400 non-compliant in terms of that total network, just within those boundaries without even going wider than that and looking to connect to those communities. So you can see the scale of challenge that we've got within those boundaries where they're more densely populated and obviously aligned to the strategic focus that we've set to those key destinations. So access to the public right-of-way is vital, both for leisure, well-being purposes and in some instances for active travel purposes, but ultimately our focus needs to be aligned to the strategic focus that's been set and ultimately the funding that we're able to tap into. Touched on the...
I think the difficulty is sometimes, you do a scheme which looks lovely and everything, and then, you've got a path that local people can't even walk across, or across a field, and it just seems as if, very little amount of funding would help that, and yet, all this money is being allocated to other schemes. Okay, just a point, thanks.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fair point, and I think the highlighted point that I made in the presentation on that final section of Kingswood Gate, that is a public right-of-way. Currently, it's away from the desire line for residents to travel, and that public right-of-way will be extinguished if and when we can deliver this scheme. So it's providing an updated public right-of-way, but it's an updated public right-of-way that people can use, and ultimately people will follow the most direct line, and we need to make sure those desire lines are compliant for all. I believe the only part that we possibly haven't covered is on enforcement and spilling over into other areas, which I pass over to Geraint, if that's okay.
Yeah, in terms of the displacement of traffic, we'd have to have a look at that and have a look in depth into that one. In terms of the school streets areas that we look at, the sensors that we have are only on those key roads where we have the school street in place. So part of the consultation will be looking at the displacement of traffic and what issues it is causing elsewhere. But Councillor Brown, I'm happy to have those discussions with displacement traffic in terms of other things that you're looking at. So I'll make a note of that and we can discuss that going forward. Like I said, we do have a team, our civil enforcement officers that do go out, but they're stretched across the whole of Monmouthshire, and I believe there are a few members of staff down at the moment, and it's a big area for them to cover while they're a few people down. So, but it's something that we can definitely look into.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Strong.
Thank you very much, Chair. I too enjoyed it the second time around, listening to the presentation, and also I'm not sure whether Geraint, you were on the seminar that we had earlier in the week, but it's quite good to have you on screen because obviously there were some issues that we raised earlier in the week that maybe you can pick up on. I've got a couple of things I want to sort of bring up today. I won't go over some of the stuff that obviously I raised earlier in the week, but I want to start by just saying thank you that after 10 years we're finally going to get a safe crossing for youngsters to go from their homes to County Court Comprehensive School. I think we're all really relieved that it's coming and we can see it, as the days go on. So I want to say a big thank you for that. We've had other bits because of the active travel funding tagged on that maybe all of us wouldn't want, but we've had some tweaks done to it. But I just want to say thank you for that. Have we got a date when some of the work is going to be happening with the sort of link through the castle grounds? I also want to sort of flag up, and this goes to Geraint and the team, the importance of play. And I think from your presentation, both earlier in the week and today, the importance of sort of play and the kind of nudging to get children using playgrounds on the way to and from school is a really important one. I see it in Roggett when we go to the community cafe and the children playing to and from, sort of going to the little school there and back home again, but also Castroggy Park. Now, I am really sort of grateful for the funds from 106 money that actually upgraded Castroggy Park, because I don't know what the figures and the stats say prior to those improvements to date, but I should imagine they've had a major sort of spike in some of the youngsters actually travelling to and from home to Castle Park School. I've recently become a governor of Castle Park School, so I'm more kind of, I'm hoping that over the next sort of few weeks I'll become more sort of aware of what's going on within the school, but I know that they've been working closely with you. There is an issue around parking in Church Road and some of the abuse that some of the residents have had, with people not realising that they could actually park in some of the parking spaces. They think they're just sort of coloured bits of tarmac. So I'm hopeful that we might be able to sort some of that out. But yeah, so if we could sort of be informed of some of the sort of stats from the consultation that you're proposing, Geraint, in the next couple of weeks, that'd be great. I would welcome that you could maybe include not just sort of Church Road, but possibly some of the properties in Castle Lee, because obviously people are walking through, and I'd like to get sort of residents sort of knowledge of that. But for my main part, I'm really pleased about progress to date. Really kind of concerned, and I know this was raised earlier in the week, of the effect of the closures to lorries going over the old bridge, and how that might impact on the B4245 and for youngsters going from sort of Megarundi, Roggett to the Comp, because it's a dangerous road now and goodness knows what it's going to be like in the next couple of weeks. So I think we need to keep our eyes on that and to obviously the safe routes for school. But if my sort of plea to Geraint is just keep us in the loop. We're really sort of supportive of what's going on. I think the safe streets is an excellent idea, and all good to go. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Strong. And I suppose, first of all, I'll pass on those thanks to the team. I know, in particular, the Woodstock Way scheme and that crossing point has been a long-standing one, and I'm pleased that we've been able to move forward with that. And again, recognition of the frustrations with that scheme on a local level. And I think just to again emphasise from an officer perspective and the grant funding challenge that we've got, on the face of it, a crossing point, again, feels quite simple. I think from an active travel network development and compliance, to secure funding, we have to cross from a compliance side to a compliance side as part of that wider network. And I think through the extensive dialogue, I think we've got to a scheme where collectively we found that middle ground. And I think one thing I want to emphasise today and continue to is, as my role has progressed over the last few years, I think that town council and local member and local stakeholder engagement is absolutely vital to everything we do in this space. We need to communicate better with our residents as to why some of these changes are coming forward and sell the benefits of it. I think there's that perception that active travel is just for cyclists. And I think this afternoon session has quite clearly shown that's far from the case. Active travel's for people, and we want to make these spaces better for people. So I think that needs to come through stronger from some of our communication. So I think that's important. Multi-user route, firstly, I know, just coming back to the point, Geraint wasn't able to join us on Monday, which was a shame because he had other commitments that it couldn't move, and I think it's shown the value today of having the both lenses. But I don't want Monday's session and today's session to be the end of these conversations. More than happy to kind of have regular dialogue across these two portfolios because of the level of importance that we collectively place on it. In terms of the multi-user route, so the funding that's been allocated through the core funding this year is part of a wider funding package linked to SPF funding and linked to Section 106 funding. So in terms of where we are, the the detail's not gone to planning yet. We've got the annual funding that we're looking to deliver within this financial window, but linked to that and linked to my last point, there'll be public consultation to look at the latest iteration of designs based on the engagement that's taken place. And I know some of that detail is fed through on a local level through some of the officers providing monthly updates across the whole Seven-Side network development, which I think is really important. So based on kind of where we are in those processes that we're going through, be expecting that construction period to be looking sort of Q3, Q4. And again, I think that is an example where we've done everything we possibly can to listen to localised members, find that middle ground between compliance in terms of standards, but also a scheme that locally members and residents can support. And I feel that we're again at that point, which shows the kind of the dialogue that we want to have. Is that okay?
Thanks, Paul. I know that over the last couple of days I've had some sort of conversations with people that actually live in Severnview Park, the care home, and they're really keen on being able to get into the castle grounds. So yeah, my only sort of plea is, can we have some entrance into Eldwood Park from the actual pavement, because not everyone is going to want to go down that slope and into the grounds late at night or after dark. But thank you anyway, and thanks for the update. That's great.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tony Easton, please.
You're on mute, Councillor.
I got my mic on as well, sorry. I got my picture on as well for you as well. There's been a couple of mentions about enforcement. John Crook mentioned it, and Jackie on Church Road, and we know, I do know that in my ward there's been a couple of enforcements taking place. But what is the complement of our enforcement team, and are they able to really look after the streets and roads of Monmouthshire? It's just a general question of the team itself. Do we have enough people, basically? Thank you, Chair.
Can I take that one? I'm afraid it falls outside the scope of the active travel that we've prepared for. I'll definitely happily take that one on board. And it is an area, the need and demand for enforcement is something that Cabinet are aware of.
What's the team at the moment? Do we know?
Sorry? Do you know how many?
No, I'm afraid I don't. I'll have to give that a written answer.
Okay, cheers.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else want to ask? Oh, Councillor Grocott, there you go.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, my raised hand function has decided it's not working this afternoon, so I'm waving at you. Firstly, could I congratulate you on your renewed appointment as chair of this committee, and also to say I am now a member of this committee, having stepped down from the cabinet last week, and I'm looking forward very much to being hopefully an active member of this committee.
Well, I'm sure you are. Thank you very much for your kind words. We enjoy public purposes. I can't even say the word public coming to speak to us here, so I hope you will encourage your residents to come and visit us.
I see Felicity has eventually dropped off. I think she put up with the committee for quite a time. I'd like to pay tribute to her. She really is a very active member of the community in Abergavenny, and has been really very involved in the discussions over the last few months around placemaking and improvements in the public realm in our main towns, and it's quite humbling to see people with that level of physical disability that Felicity has got, and yet she's still determined to actually make a lot of very sensible points. So it was great to be able to follow on after her, if you like. I'd just like to raise one issue. And I'm very, very lucky in that I have a brand new safe route opposite my house on the lane where I live in Abergavenny. And I'd like to start off by really just talking about the quality of the engineering
that has gone into making of this new route, because the engineering is of the highest standard. It really is fantastic. But then one thing coming from that does concern me is that now we've got this and it is used by hundreds and hundreds of children. There are 3 schools very close to where I live in Abergavenny. There's the Catholic primary, Cantref, and of course the new King Henry 3 to 19. So it is used by hundreds of children every day. And it's great to see that, because when I was first elected as a governor at King Henry, there wasn't even a solitary bike rack in the school. So I think it shows how far we've moved on in 10 years, just under 10 years, in terms of expecting children to be able to get themselves to school. But we need to monitor things like those safe routes, because hand in glove with the creation of the tarmac surface and all the obvious things, also came a lot of planting to maintain the greenery around the route, because it's separated from the actual road by a hedge. So you've got the road, then you've got to form a very narrow, inadequate pavement, then a hedge, and then the safe route to King Henry. What worries me is that if we don't monitor that, we'll be risking in quite a short length of time to the situation that we're in with the dreaded filling of potholes, where people come along and just chuck a little bit in, tamp it down a bit, and a month later the first storm blows this away. And my concern is, if you like, stoked by the planting that's gone on alongside the safe route, because about 60 little fledgling bushes were put in at points where the hedge was not adequate. Now, they put them in a month ago, and the first rain was yesterday. Nobody had watered them. My wife and I have gone out and watered them on rota every day to keep them alive. But now the poor things have just been overwhelmed by bindweed, and will be killed by the bindweed very quickly if nothing is done. So this, I think, is for Paul, really. Having built this fantastic thing to a very high standard of engineering, we need to actually make sure that it's fit for the purpose that it was intended for, and that the surface doesn't start to crack up through lack of monitoring, that this planting of new greenery is nourished and tended to a degree. And I do worry that, building the safe route is not the end of the process. It's fantastic, it's there, but it doesn't then look after itself. And we need to have dedicated people on the case of looking after what we have created. And we also, as far as we can, need to, I know it's done all the time, but we need to redouble efforts to try to stop parents taking their children to school when they live just 5-10 minute walk away. Cantref Primary School, very close to where I live, actually the public highway is closed twice a day. So you cannot drive down Harold Road before school and for half an hour after school. Now, of course, what's happened to an extent is that parents just park further away because they can't drive into Harold Road. But it would be good, I think, if we could look at all our schools and where it's possible to get highway colleagues to actually work with our colleagues in education to say that road could actually be stopped to through traffic for the 30 minutes before and after the school day. That would go some considerable way to stopping or cutting down the awful school rush that we get, which in many cases is totally unnecessary. The children are very good at walking, I think.
Yes, please, Paul.
I think Councillor Grocott has identified some of our key challenges, both in terms of the challenge of ongoing maintenance, so that when a path a route is created, that's built into maintenance schedules, and the same with the green infrastructure. So that we have equality of esteem, if you like, between our pedestrian realm and our highways realm, and the other issues around behaviour. A great many of the issues that arise, I think, in all of our inboxes are around driver behaviour, and how we can communicate that changed priority, which is now in the highway code, and a little common sense about parking and consideration for other road users by drivers and pedestrians, and in some cases cyclists. That message of share with care is something that we are actively working on.
Thank you, Councillor Birch, and thank you, Councillor Grocott, for the question. The ongoing maintenance is a challenge across all schemes. It's a challenge across our existing compliant network for active travel, let alone kind of extending that wider, and something we continue to feed back to Transport for Wales in our regular catch-up. So it's certainly not a point that's lost on us. I think the 3 to 19 route, again, coming back to Councillor Murphy's point earlier around maximising funding opportunities, that was an active travel scheme that was delivered through Safe Routes and Communities. Again, input from a planning perspective. So when the new school was being designed, the current active travel route outside of the school boundary across the southern section of that site was built in through dialogue at a planning stage. And I think it's really important and shows the connectivity east to west through that site, and then onward suddenly through the section that we've since been able to deliver. Again, I think the resident feedback on Penny Pound and the engagement with the community groups has been key to that, to get to that point where we've got a scheme that collectively benefits everyone, and I think testament to some of the officers leading on that project for the level of engagement they've seen on that local level. Planting is done in conjunction with green infrastructure, and I think coming back to Councillor Sandal's point earlier around, Councillor Strong's point earlier around the attractiveness of routes and access via play and others, I think the attractiveness and how much people want to use these are really important. The more they're used, the greater safety it is going to feel, because they're kind of strength in numbers approach. So the planting and the scheduling along that is going to be key to ensure that people want to access that. And I think the last point that I'd like to make, and perhaps Geraint might want to add anything in more detail, we touched on earlier, I think with the transition programme, where we talked about understanding the data and understanding the young people. We need to know what families are driving up the road 3 minutes away and trying to incentivise some of that behavioural change, just done in a targeted way, not to feel like it's being done to, but to try and understand the reasonings behind that and try and support those residents to make those changes. Geraint, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add there.
Yeah, we're currently working on with schools through a program called Living Streets, and they've got something called the WOW Tracker, and it's to encourage children to actively travel to school. And the more they actively travel, they get badges, and all children and some adults love a badge, and it does really incentivize those journeys. So we are trying to push that message as much as possible, as well as other things, through things like our Scoot to School training. You know, we talk about sharing the pathway with other users, how to ride your scooters courteously while getting to and from school. It's all those types of education program, those interventions that we're running have got the underpinning message of active travel safely to and from school as well.
Okay, now, sorry to tell you guys, it's my turn. I get the privilege of asking the questions last, which means I pick up on the questions that the others have missed, or pick up a bit more detail. So thank you very much. Now, the things I would like to ask is tarmac and options. So we've seen these lovely schemes. And we are aware, obviously, of environmental issues, at least I certainly am, and water runoff and flooding, etc. So how permeable, is that the correct word, are these schemes with tarmac? So that's the one, because I worry about that. The e-move option, will it be running again, or is it still currently running? The RAG, red, amber, green for quick wins. Very keen to hear more about that in future going forward, as is Councillor Bryn. I think we all are, to understand how that can be operated, and whether there is a fairness in percentage-wise throughout the wards, if that makes sense, so everybody gets a crack at it and not just certain areas, because there's been a lot of talk about the 7 core areas, but the rural areas do suffer greatly too, and the little things there could make a huge difference, tremendous difference to some people's lives, and we concentrate very much on the towns, and perhaps we should look a little further occasionally. Parking issues, displacements, and HABs. There you go, 3 lots of words. In Monmouth, in particular, Hereford Road, now that HABs have put their sixth form up to the top of Hereford Road, we're having a huge parking issue with seniors, and what happens when the double yellow lines get moved, they just walk a bit further or park a bit further. Is there anything we can do, please, to engage? And trust me, I've been trying to engage with them, but it isn't working. We really do need to crack that issue. And the other one, which I really very, very keen on, because I get to see it where I work, is safe drop-offs. I couldn't agree more. We need to find safe drop-off and pick-up points for parents. It's so logical, it's so simple, and it will save them tons of time, and all because don't want to walk to the last few hundred metres or half mile, whatever it is. I can always hear my dad saying to me, Shanks is pony. For you that don't know what that is, that's your legs. And budget for maintenance. So Councillor Grocott mentioned the maintenance, which is very true, for all these bushes, etc., which are wonderful, but they take maintaining, as we've identified. But is there a budget for such things? There you go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think I've made a note of them all. Feel free to let me know if there's any I've missed. So that'd be useful. So in terms of the first point around the tarmac, all of the schemes in which designed and delivered need to be compliant with sustainable urban drainage, and as such, any plans and enhancements that we can deliver as part of those schemes are included. So any runoff is not going to have a detrimental impact to the environment, and that's really important. I think one project that I'd like to highlight in particular with that, and again emphasis of how the WellTag process works, is the Castle Meadows scheme in Abergavenny, where the initial proposal for the surface was to be tarmac. That is now being proposed to be a permeable resin-bound surface, again linked to that environmental basis, but also linked to the nature of the area that we're in, and the understanding on a local level of the passion to keep that area as preserved as we possibly can in terms of the beauty of the spot. E-Move project, it's not currently taking place. It was linked to a funding package that we had as part of the Abergavenny scheme, and delivered in partnerships with Welsh Government and Sustrans. So at the moment that scheme isn't to take place, and no plans to extend that wider. I think that has since been moved to another area across Wales as part of the national pilot work that we're doing. But again, I think some of the lessons learned on a local level, it'd be interesting to see how we perhaps take some of that forward on a more kind of localised, sustainable footprint. RAG rating, I know we've referenced it. I think the equality to funding and equity across Monmouthshire is really important. I think I've covered the point around the location boundaries and the challenge that we've got from an active travel funding perspective. But again, just to emphasise that I see active travel and I see accessibility as a collective responsibility right across the organisation. So anything outside of that boundaries, whilst it might not be compliant for active travel funding, I think it's important that we understand what we can collectively do for those residents in those more rural locations. And I think the prioritisation will start to hopefully help with some of that, both within our 7 localities, but also from a rural perspective. Last one, I believe, was focused. Oh, actually, I'll take the budget one first, and I'll pass over to Geraint. The budget for maintenance, similar to the point I believe that we covered with Councillor Grucott, there isn't budget for maintenance. The funding that we apply for on an annual basis is for the scheme development of new initiatives or the implementation of those new initiatives, and something that we continue to lobby on a national front through the Active Travel Officer Working Group within Transport for Wales. So I know it's not just something that is a challenge within Monmouthshire. I think that's possibly
safe drop-offs.
Yeah, and then I was going to pass to Geraint for the safe drop-offs and the kind of.
Before you do,
yeah.
So when we say budget for maintenance, okay, the initial setup doesn't include that, but then surely going forward, someone has to budget for that. So whose responsibility is that, and is that happening?
Yeah, so moving forward, once it's as part of the network, if it's adopted, then that will fall within the kind of wider budget for maintenance within our highways and our grounds team. And that relationship that we've got through the active travel team, but inwards to that, is looking to maximise that as much as possible. But we do see issues sometimes with the difference between adopted and unadopted roads. And I think that's not just active travel, but wider. But that allocation for maintenance effectively comes out to that core funding then.
Thank you. Geraint, your turn.
Thanks for that. Yes, so we're working with schools at the moment. We're trying to take some good practice that we've seen in other local authorities where they're doing things like walking buses, or they've been called crocodile buses, where volunteers from the school, normally parents, will meet children at certain points on the way to and from school. So they've been DBS checked and have safeguarding and all that. And they meet at certain pickup points on the way to school, and that walking bus grows as it goes. There's another example of a cycle bus in Cardiff, which we're keen to look at for some of our key schools in Monmouthshire. It doesn't lend itself to every school in Monmouthshire, but the ones that we're working with, the ones that are getting their active travel school plans in, we're trying to put those type of things as their action plans. So I know Osbaston last year, for example, on a Friday during the summer, they done a cycle to school where they had parents cycle involuntary with children, and they drop them off and meet them at certain points to get them to school, to try and alleviate some of that traffic outside the school. There is no simple answer for displacement of traffic and traffic outside schools, but it's trying to change that behaviour towards it. So can we look at doing park and strides? Can we look at some sort of promotion around active travel? The 3 schools that we've chosen that are currently part of our school streets, we've tried to offer alternative parking. So when the letters have gone out to parents, it says on the letter, can you make use of parking at A or B, to try and alleviate the parking in and around the school. So while school streets doesn't lend itself to every school, there are certainly some other things that we can look into, but a lot of the time it is getting the school to work with us and for them to take some ownership over it as well, because we can't be there as a team every day. So we are looking for the school to try and take some responsibility for it as well, and try and promote that active travel, as well as being road safe outside the school.
Yeah, right, that's very interesting. Thank you. But take it back a little. So when we talk about Osbaston School, as everybody will know, my passion about Vauxhall Bridge, though some call it English Bridge, and hopefully its reincarnation very shortly. So that is a huge thing in Monmouth. I mean, it literally has cut Monmouth in half. Doesn't matter where you live in Monmouth, it affects you. So hopefully that's going to be sorted, because currently that is one huge issue for Osbastard. So we take that out of the equation, okay, hopefully there wins and we can get and see those, that's great. But the Hereford Road and the Habs, which is a private school, are you able to approach, because these we're talking about senior people, young people now. We're not talking about young pupils. We are talking about drivers and their parking issues and where they're parking, where not parking. Is that possible to approach, please? Because trust me, I'm trying and I'm getting nowhere. Thank you.
No problem. It's something, I'll make a note of it, and it's definitely something we can look into. I'll speak to Graham Kinsella about it and see what we can do from our side.
Poor Graham, he gets me all the time. Okay. All right, so unless anybody else has got anything else, I firstly would like to thank very much to Paul, Gerard, and of course to Sarah for attending today to answer our questions. And most particularly, I would like to thank Felicity, because it takes guts to come and talk to us lot. And I can't emphasise it enough. Please, please bring your residents, encourage them to come and talk to us, because it's them that make the difference. It's them that put us here, and we can't do anything if we don't hear from them. And I think Paul has emphasise that clearly today and that, so thank you. Right, so on a roundup, starting on the top left corner, Councillor Strong, to follow up on NRW and the letter, okay, and that will be done. Thank you, and then moving on, thank you for the crossing in Caldecott, Castle Ground links, using play schools to and from school, really like that idea. Closure of the LGV on the O7 bridge and the effects it's going to have, and you also asked for an entrance from Something Way, and I didn't get what you were saying, to make sure there was pedestrian.
It's from the castle up to Elderwood Park, the actual new residential development, to Seven View Park Care Home, because.
Sorry, the people that work there get off at the bus at Deepwear, and they have to go all the way around through the new estate to get to work. When if there was a little gate from the path into their place of work, it would be a lot easier. And I know that, I keep banging on about it, but I'll keep banging on about it until something happens. So thank you.
You can bang away here, I don't mind. Active travel is for people, was Paul's answer, and SPF fund engagement throughout the Sevenside area. Okay, Councillor Crook, who unfortunately has had to leave. Andy School, data look, reference to school streets, traffic issues and road closures, and how that affects where everybody parks. And Paul's answer was it was Gerard's actually, first week of May, parking enforcement and education of parents. Good luck with that one. I keep trying. Councillor Grocott, tribute to Felicity. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think everybody does. Thank you. High standards of engineering. Yes, great. Thank you very much. Monitor the safe routes and how it's been used and how it's been damaged. Maintain of hedge, maintenance of surface, displacement of parents, traffic. Familiar tone, isn't it? They are, in response, they are well aware of this issue. So thanks to the team there. Understanding in data, encouragement of change and positive change badges. That's from Gerard. Councillor Murphy, funding for schemes and planning in RLDP to make sure future proofing. I can't even say that answer, do apologise. Packaging schemes, tender ready stages, so making sure it's all tender ready. Councillor Louise Brown, forward work plan, building asset list to be looked at, please. And then questions, 6 million award, fairness, make sure it's spread fairly and try to make sure there are other places in Monmouthshire. Active travel, urban areas, not just rural urban areas, but include rural areas, sorry. Public rights of way and displacement of traffic and parking. Restrictive rights of way being looked at. Funding for traffic, transport, hub, and active travel is still available, apparently, and that was confirmed. And levelling up fund for bus and train route station, working with Chepstow Town Council, WildTag and local knowledge proving to be very important. Then Councillor Bryn, small interventions, getting work done, lists of order, and looking forward to understanding the priority of the RAG system. 21 of 34 school plans, how many are being worked on? Rolling documents, Gerard said. Then also comp safe drop-offs, which I picked up as well. 63% of active travel want more. 63% of children want more active travel. Cycling training, encourage year 6. Every year 6 has access to training for bikes. Councillor Tony Eastman, how many enforcement officers on the team? Unfortunately not known, and they'll come back to him. Myself, tarmac options, making sure that we have use of the environmental issues and to allow the water to be permeable into the system. E-move option, whether it's going to be available for other parts of Monmouthshire. RAG system for quick wins, and perhaps also looking at how every area could have an option to get access to that, and so it's fairly distributed. Parking issue, displacements and hubs travel at Monmouth, safe drop-off and pickups, and budget for maintenance. Castle Medal was an option, a very proud moment for Paul in reference to the permeable resin used. E-move not available at the moment. RAG hopefully be looked at and will be taken forward. Budget maintenance is used by and given to Highways and Grounds team. I think I got it all, but I'm not sure. So thank you very much, everybody. Now, before we run away, our next meeting is Thursday the 5th of June. It's 2 p.m. It's a special meeting. Yeah, and Robert wants to butt in before I let you all go.
Apologies, I forgot to say this during our forward work programme discussion, item 5, but just to let you know, because it's changed since the agenda was published, the placemaking plans for the 10th of July have now dropped back to our November meeting, but in their place the flood strategy has moved forward, which I know everyone would want to know about, so that's why I thought I'd say now. I think I'll email everyone anyway, because we've got some people not here now and some people substituted, also because public services...
Robert, can you just say the date again?
10th of July, so
okay.
It's in that slot now. Along with possibly Councillor Bryn, the car parking review. I've had an update during the meeting, so that is penciled for that date, so that might fall back, but as it stands, maybe. But yeah, just certainly because of the chair's point about including the public wherever possible, if you want to mention to the residents about the flood strategy on that date. Yes, Councillor.
I just wondered what the special meeting was covering.
That's the destination management plan. It was called initially for the RLDP, but that's dropped back to our September meeting. But the destination management plan, that's the only date that can be scrutinised. So we need to keep the date. So it's going to be potentially a shorter meeting, but that's what the 5th is for. That's also why I thought I'd mention this stuff, because it's a special meeting on the 5th. The agenda won't cover the forward work programme. So that's why I thought it was important to raise that now. So destination management are the next one, and then 10th of July is the one after that, and that's where we will have Shire Hall financial update, flood strategy, so if you want to get the word out to the residents, and potentially the car parking review. Okay, thank you.
Potentially, but not certain yet.
Potentially, but I'll confirm with you once it's been confirmed with me.
So again, thank you very much for everybody attending. Thank you to the officers, and look forward to all seeing you again soon. Thank you.